بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا رب لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. When Dr. Mursi was talking in Sudan, that's how he began his thing in the mosque. I was very happy. So up till now, every talk, we've had 14 to 16 of these. Today, I have 27. So that's why I asked brothers, we won't be using the projector, because we won't have the 10, 20, 15 seconds of guys look and blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to draw it in your mind, inshallah. The next week, we'll do the recap, and inshallah you'll see things visually. So last time we stopped at, now the Mongols are 35 kilometers away from Egypt. They're in Gaza, and they want to attack and destroy really the last stronghold in the Muslim Empire, which is the country of Egypt. I mentioned that there was a lot of internal strife with kings killing each other, and then eventually the king Al-Mu'izz, who was a Mamluk, was made king after his wife, who was king, stepped down, Shajrat al-Dur, and then he was killed by Shajrat al-Dur for wanting to marry a third wife, and then he was killed by Shajrat al-Dur, and then his first wife said, let me kill her, and she killed Shajrat al-Dur she made her servants and maids kill her with their slippers and their shoes. So now the son of Al-Mu'izz, is the king. This is where we ended last time. He's 15 years old. So we said that the person who is really the power in Egypt now was Qutuz, Saifuddin Qutuz, and that he was the man in charge of the military, and he really was running the scenes. Even the king knew that. Even the 50-year-old king knew that. Everyone knew it. His name is Muhammad ibn Mamdud. Saifuddin Qutuz, his name is Mahmud ibn Mamdud. And he is a nephew of the king Jalaluddin ibn Muhammad ibn Khawarizm, who we talked about before. Remember the guy who, after he beat the Mongols twice? The only guy before Qutuz actually, if my memory serves me correctly, to beat the Mongols was him. But then after he beat them, he started doing to the Muslims what the Mongols were doing to the Muslims. And then he died on the hands of a Kurdish farmer who he had killed his brother. So he invited them in, let him sleep in his house, and then he killed the first one. So he was caught by the Mongols. When I said that the Mongols had captured Jalaluddin's wives and sisters and family, he was one of the kids that was caught. They killed a lot of them, but he was one of the people that they didn't kill, and they sold him on the slave market, and he was sold from what we now call Iran, all the way into Hashem, and then all the way to Egypt. And he was owned by Al-Mu'izz, and Al-Mu'izz, in the ranks of Al-Mu'izz, he grew, and he was the head of the army. The people who call them Qutuz are the Mongols, and because Qutuz in Mongolian means fierce dog. So even from a very, very young age, they saw within him that he had leadership capabilities, and he was a man to be reckoned with. His story is very much like the story of Musa. He's captured. He grows up with the enemy, right? But also his story is very, very much like Yusuf, in that he's made a slave, and then he becomes minister of whatever, but it doesn't matter. But he becomes minister through slavery. Yeah. So subhanAllah, he shares both of their stories. He was known to be very patient, very disciplined, very intelligent, very sharp. And he had the lineage of kings, so he grew up in the household of kings. He was confident, he knew how to throw his weight around. The other thing is he had first-hand experience of what the Mongols were like. The fact that they were treacherous, you couldn't trust them, what they did to his uncle and his parents, etc. So Al-Malik al-Mu'izz, like I said, he's died, and Al-Mansur, Nuruddin Ali, his son, is 50 years old. There's unrest. Right? There was unrest when Shajrat al-Dur was made the king, because she was a woman. Now there's unrest that he is the king because he's a 15-year-old kid. And the Mongols are very, very close. We can't have that. So there's a bit of uproar, as well as the fact that because of the fact that the sea Mamluks, if you remember, there were two types of Mamluks we talked about this last week. The sea Mamluks and the Mamluks that were created by the king who just was killed by the sea Mamluks' treachery, right? So the sea Mamluks left then. When Shah Jahan was killed, they left and they went to Sham. They went to Palestine, Jordan, Damascus, etc. And they went right there. And when they got to Sham, when they were in Egypt, they were fighting the Sham because Sham kept trying to transgress against Egypt. When they went there, they went to the Sham. They said, "Come on, let's fight Egypt." Yeah, so everything was upside down. Now there are people like a man called Singar al-Halabi. He was a Mamluk as well, and he was orchestrating a lot of the uproars and chaos within Egypt to overthrow the king because he wanted then to rise up and claim the throne. Qutuz caught him, detained him, and he caught the others of the sea Mamluks that were causing chaos. Some of them fled to Sham, etc., like I said, but he caught him and he detained him. One of the people that they went to was called Mughith ad-Din Umar, and he was in Asham. He was very weak, right? He was very, very weak, but very greedy, right? He saw himself bigger than what he really was. So when they went to him and they said, "Come on, we'll help you conquer Egypt. We know what's inside there, we know what's weakness and strength," he said, "Okay, fine." So he attacked Egypt in the year 656, roughly Hijri, and Qutuz battered him, completely annihilated him. Then 2 months, a few months later, he tried again, and the second time he tried was just 2 months after the fall of Baghdad. So you see, these people don't care, what's happening to the Muslim world, and again, he was annihilated. So Holako right now is in Halab. Remember we mentioned this the time before last. So he's in Halab, and everyone knows that Egypt is next. So Qutuz is like, there's a kid on the throne, and there's an imminent threat. These guys who have destroyed, they started off in Upper Mongolia, they moved in Korea, Japan, China, all of Iran, all of Iraq, Russia. They did what Hitler could do. They moved everywhere, and now they're in Egypt. So all of that land, Qutuz is like, there's an imminent threat. No way will they just stop at Palestine. No way. It's very obvious that they want to conquer everything that they can. And Egypt is the most important Muslim country left standing, the only power really left standing. Even Islamic Spain and Darus, etc., had fallen very around that time as well. So really Egypt was the last thing standing. After that, everything would fall to the Mongols. So the fact that they had a 15-year-old kid in the throne just made the people from Hashem want to attack, made the Mongols feel even more confident and the bravado, etc. So he took a decision. He's the guy acting, he's pulling all the strings anyway. He took a decision, I'm going to move him aside and I'm going to become king. And so he does so. And he did this just before, a few days before, Holako reached the city of Halab in Syria. From that very first day, he announced that he wanted to do jihad against the Mongols. From that very first day. Now they're not in Egypt yet. Okay, no one's done that up till now. No Muslim ruler has done that. The Muslim rulers are always, they call up till now, because of the treachery and the weakness, they only call for jihad if they think that their throne is like the guy Nasser Yusuf we talked about last week. Only if they think that their throne is under attack. Oh, now there's the jihad. We might as well, yeah? But Qutuz was the first guy who said, they're not here yet, let's go do jihad with them. But in the last 10 years, there was tons of political chaos. Especially recently, the death of Al-Mu'izz. So Qutuz now is in line. He's in line for all the treachery, he's in line for all the assassinations that will happen, etc., etc. So he has to make sure that everything is in order, as well as the fact that the sea Mamluks hate him because he was one of the Al-Mu'izzi Mamluks. So he has to sort that out. Another one of the things that's wrong right now as he become king, Egypt has extremely bad ties with its neighbours. Hashem, obviously we keep talking about that, Jordan, Palestine, Syria keep attacking it, the Crusaders keep attacking it. Sudan, Libya, there's nothing with them. Yeah? At the very least, they're envious. Okay, and sometimes they're at war and there's bloodshed, etc. The other factor to consider is the economic disaster that Egypt was in. Okay? Now, as I'm saying this, draw a parallel with what's happening today in Egypt, right? And that area. Economic disaster, the continuous wars with the Crusaders, the corruption, okay? The war with Hashem, the war with Palestine, etc. So now he has to take steps in order to stabilize and strengthen Egypt before the Mongols invade. So the first step that he takes is he has to fix things politically, right? The echelons of power the tides have to calm a little bit. It's too much instability. So he calls for all the leaders, all the generals, and all of the ulama, all the politicians to a meeting. And this is his first shura, right, with his people. He says the following: I did not do what I did except so that we can fight the Mongols. And this will not happen without power. I.e., I can't be the guy pulling the strings with a little, with a puppet, 15-year-old puppet sitting on the seat. Power has to be in my hands, or else it's not gonna happen. If we leave and we break this enemy, then I will step down and the choice will be yours. Choose whichever ruler you want. Again, the first time in recent history that any ruler has done this. Everyone's after the throne, everyone's after power. They all agreed because they saw that he was being sincere. They saw he's not doing this for power, blah, blah, blah. He's just doing this because he wants to defeat the Mongols. Now, some of the Western historians and some Muslim historians as well, they'll say, oh, he only said this it was like he was speaking well so that it was a double bluff, right? He was only saying this because he knew that they would. But this isn't in line with what Qutuz is like. This is not in line with what he's like. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُصْلِحُ عَمَلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not fix or give barakah to, or make it, or give results to the people that are mufsideen, that are treacherous, that are evil. Yeah? So Qutuz will win. This is the end of the story, is he's going to win. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not give him victory. We saw Nasr Yusuf before, we drew Jalaluddin, even he won and then he lost afterwards. We saw all of these things. We've got now, 60 years of history. If he was not sincere, he would lose. So he didn't say this, as political sweet talk. Now, he wasn't just a nice guy, right? He was also he was able to make strong decisions. He removed one of the ministers, his name was Ibn Bint al-Mu'izz or al-A'iz or something like that. And he was allied to Shajarat al-Dur that was killed, the woman, the queen that was killed. He removed him and he replaced him with something better. But he kept a man called Faris ad-Din Aqtai. Now you remember Faris ad-Din Aqtai was killed by Mu'izz. Lost an age, don't worry. Okay, this guy isn't him, this was junior, right? Faris ad-Din Aqtai, the younger. As-Salihi. So he was still one of the Mamluks, but he was a man to be trusted. He was truthful, he was strong, he was competent. So Qutuz kept him in place. And this sent a very, very good message to the people, which was, I'm not here for power. I'm going to put the competent people where the competent people belong. Right? Can you see a completely different message? Right? I'm going to keep the competent people where they belong. Also, he's sending a message to the Mamluks of, you don't need to feel threatened. I'm not going to be against you just because you're a Mamluk. Yeah? If you're good, etc., etc., I'm happy to work with you. The only reason it's not that they were Navy. The only reason, I'll explain again, the only reason they're called Mamluks is because the river Nile was called sea back then, Bahr, as opposed to Nil, and they used to live on a castle there. So, he ordered him, this Faris ad-Din Aqtai, to jihad, ordered him to make the preparations, etc. The second step he did, so the first is to fix the political unrest. The second now is to fix internal stability within the country. Internal stability within the country. And these steps are necessary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. You have to all hold on to the rope of Allah, all of you, and do not disunite. And you will not find an ayah in the Quran with the similar linguistic structure as this ayah, ever. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to do something, and He's asking you not to do something, and that something is the same thing. Okay? So it's not like Aqim as-salah, go pray, and don't forget to pray. Right? You don't find that in the Quran. The only time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you to do something and not to do the opposite of that thing is in this ayah. So it's huge. And another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not disunite, فَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. Don't disunite or else your wind will be taken away from you. The metaphor is you're on a boat or a ship and there's a sail and all of a sudden there's no wind. You're just sitting there. You have no power. You're a sitting duck. You have no power. So unity is the first thing. People say, oh, why don't they just walk into Gaza and do this or that? Unity, you have to. If people are backstabbing you in your own cabinet, how are you going to leave your room, never mind your country? So now the internal stability has to be sorted out. The first decision, and this decision of pure brilliance, he gave full, honest, true pardon to the sea Mamluks. These are the people who killed the king previously, Al-Mu'izz. These are the people that were causing chaos and unrest. He gave them full pardon. He realized that these people are very strong. They're the biggest part of the army. So if they're not here, that's a big deal. They have lots of experience in the wars. They're the ones that beat Louis the Ninth from France. So he said to them, come back to your home. He knew that many of them went to Sham and then they went to Nasser Yusuf. And Nasser Yusuf was in Damascus doing jihad even though they were in Halab. Right? The Mongols were in Halab, but he was 350 kilometers away doing jihad remote control. So the Mongols went there and they were like, this is the joke. For example, Babers, who was the second in command of the sea Mamluks, he went to Nasser Yusuf and he said, how can you run from there? But he didn't listen. So at the end of the day, Babers was left all alone in Palestine and the Mongols are coming. He wants to do jihad, they can't do jihad on his own, on his lonesome. So they weren't happy. They felt like they'd left dignity, they left strength, and now they were just sitting with fools. Yeah, they didn't feel like that they belong. So he said, come back home, I'll give you full pardon. They came flooding back from Turkey, from Jordan, from Damascus, from Halab, from Palestine, and he treated them very, very well. Wherever they were before they left, he put them in the same place. He didn't down rank them. Yeah, he just kept them where they were. And then with Babers, who was the second in command, and now he's the first in command because Farasuddin Akhtai died, somebody was killed. When he came back, like I said, he went to Nasser Yusuf, Babers, and he said to him, let's do jihad, etc., etc., and he was left in Gaza. Now when he came back, Babers, he gave him, he made him almost second in charge, second in command. He gave him huge rank. He gave him land, lots and lots of land, and he basically made him feel that this isn't a joke, this isn't a double bluff, this isn't me, sweetening you up before I stab you in the back. You are what you were before and more. And he kept him in his place. This man, Babers, is very skilled in his military experience. Very sharp. Loves Islam. He adores Islam. Even when he was at Nasser Yusuf, he was only there because he was fleeing for his life. But when he was there, he was like, let's go to jihad. But Nasser was a coward. And the sea Mamluks adore this man. He is their leader. So it's very crucial that he's back. Or else the sea Mamluks will always feel like, once we win against the Mongols, we'll all be slaughtered. So the lesson here, brothers and sisters, in Islam, politics is not lying, it's not hypocrisy. In Islam, politics is not hypocrisy. You're not allowed as a politician to say, oh look, politics is about lying, politics is about illusions, spin doctors, all of these things. In Islam, this is not the case. You're not permitted to lie. Yeah, just because you're a politician. That's not allowed. Unless you're lying to the enemy. And even then with strict conditions. You're not allowed to lie to your own people and call it politics. The other lesson is that when a leader is confident in and of himself, he does not need to be afraid of other strengths. Why? I'm strong and you're strong. Together we'll be stronger. But if I'm weak and you're stronger than me, then I'll start to feel afraid, isn't it? But if I'm weak and you're stronger than me, why am I on the throne? You should be on the throne. That's the truth of the matter. Yeah? If he was strong and he was strong, come, we'll work together. The other thing is that Qutuz now has given them a new target. You see, in dunya, when you go for dunya, yes, there are unlimited resources. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. And in the heavens there is your rizq and what you have been promised. And he says about the heavens, وَإِنَّا لَمُسْيَعُونَ. And we are expanding it. So we're expanding the thing that gives you your rizq. So your rizq we shouldn't feel like it's a scarce resource. There's more khair than can go around. Yeah? But still, the khair in dunya is limited, is it not? This dunya is limited, but when you're calling for jihad, you're calling for the hereafter, you're calling for Jannah, it's unlimited. And so, I don't have to fight with you over Egypt and Sham and Palestine and this and that. What I'm fighting with you over is the hereafter. And in order to fight and compete over the hereafter, I have to befriend you in this life. Does that make sense? So the whole thing was realigned to work together. The third step that he did was he built, now he needs to have stability with his neighbors. It can't be the case that he's fighting in Sham every other week. It can't be the case he's fighting Jordan or etc. So he sent Al-Nasir Yusuf a letter. Okay? Now, why Nasir Yusuf? He started with him because he's probably the strongest of the Ayyubin in the Sham. He is in charge of Halab and Damascus, the two biggest cities. He knows that Nasir Yusuf hates him. First of all, he's a Mamluk, and secondly, he helped to defeat Nasir Yusuf when he attacked before. He knows also that Nasir Yusuf asked the Mongols to help him in order to defeat Egypt. He knows all of this. But unity. Unity. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. And you know what, you can, in current history, you say, yeah, I think he's doing a mistake. But when you look back at history, and the thing is proven, they won the war because of these tactics. You can't say, oh, he's been a weak-hearted man. He's doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah, all of you, and do not disunite. So he's disunited, I have to hold on to the rope. I have to make him hold on to the rope because he's disunited. Does that make sense? It covers all contexts. It's not just that I have to hold on to the rope and if he disunites, that's his problem. No, I have to run after him and say, come back please. This is part of our deen. So he sends him a letter. And he sends him this letter before the Mongols reach Halab. Before the Mongols reach the first city that he owns. Right? And he says to him the following. He says, let's unite. Listen to this. This is so strange. He says, let's unite. Egypt and Sham, let's make them one. And you be the king of Egypt and Sham. He knows that this guy is a fool. He knows that this guy is a ridiculous puppet, a show of a leader. But he says, let's unite and you be the king. Why is he doing this? Because even with an idiot like him on the throne, unity is more important. Even with him. And then he says, if you don't want this, because you don't trust me, you think I'm just calling you to stab you in the back, then we will not unite. But allow me to send you some soldiers to help you in Halab. I will come with them. And he says, if you choose me, I will serve you. Look at this. He's the king of Egypt. Halab and Damascus. Nothing in comparison. There's two cities, they're not even like full Sham. Nothing in comparison. But he steps down from him. Look at the humility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that believers are humble with one another. Yeah, we're harsh with those that are envious towards us, but we're humble with one another. Everyone up till now has been the opposite of that. Yeah, you're my brother, let me treat you like garbage, and let me go, kiss the Mongols, hug them, sweeten them up. It's the exact opposite. He says, and if you do not trust me, then I will send you my soldiers with whomever you trust. Why? Because Al-Nasir Yusuf, Berbers went to him. So he said, if you trust Berbers, I'll send Berbers with them, if you don't trust me. Look at this. Completely going out of his way. Al-Nasir Yusuf didn't accept. Why? Because he doesn't want to fight. We already talked about this before. His plan was never to fight. He's just calling for jihad to keep his throne. He's in Damascus and they're in Halab, and he owns Halab. Why is he in Damascus? He doesn't care. He doesn't care. So he says no. The Mongols, they defeat Halab, and then they get to Damascus, and he flees with his army to Palestine. When he gets to Palestine, his army are fed up on him. Yeah? What is going on? What is this guy? Yeah? And they leave him. They decide to abandon the leader and they leave him. Good riddance. They trusted Qutuz. Why did they trust Qutuz? Because Qutuz gave full pardon to the people that wanted to kill him and kill his king previously. Qutuz not only gave full pardon, but gave him full respect. So now they're like, we were the army that tried to war against Egypt, but this guy will give us full pardon if we join him. So they said, we trust him. He came only to power to fight, and then he said, I'll stand down and let you become the king. This guy's doing it for Allah, so we can trust him. So they went and they joined the army in Egypt. Al-Nasr fled and he went to a desert. His story is a long story. We don't have time for it. Then Qutuz sent letters to other kings. He sent a letter to Hamad, the leader there was Al-Mansur. He agreed. He said, yes, I will join with you. And he went to Egypt, him and his army went to Egypt. He sent a letter to Al-Mughith Omar. Who is Al-Mughith Omar? We just talked about 10 minutes ago. He's the guy that attacked Egypt twice. And Qutuz battled him and sent him back. He sent him a letter. Okay? And he said, join the camp. I give you full pardon. He said, no. He said, no, I don't know. Let me think about it. Okay, and he didn't join. What was he doing? He wanted to see who will win. If the Mongols win, guys, hey, how you doing? We're friends. I didn't join them. If the Mongols win, I was coming. If the Muslims win, I was coming. I was just held up. Okay, so he wanted to wait. Yeah, we mentioned this last week. There are some people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Quran, they slow down, yeah, and they wait. And then they see who wins. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how if the non-Muslims win, they say, we were with you. And if the Muslims win, they say, we weren't with the enemy, we were with you. Yeah? And he was waiting to do exactly that. He sent a letter to Al-Ashraf Ayyubi, Hims, who was with the Mongols. Remember? He had already allied with the Mongols and he let them come into Halab. He said, no, I'm staying with the Mongols, thank you. He sent it to another ruler, Al-Sa'id Hassan ibn Abdul Aziz. He said the same thing. I'm allying myself with the Mongols. Very strange. Very, very strange. So let's recap. What has Qutuz done up till now? He settled the internal political affairs. He settled the affairs of the country, given full pardon. Everyone now has loyalty to Qutuz. Everyone within Egypt has loyalty to Qutuz. Everyone knows that his one objective is jihad. He forgave the Mamluk. And everyone was reassured, not just the Mamluk, but the people, the nation. Because your army is fighting with each other. So now people felt reassured. This man knows what he's doing, and we actually have a chance. The other thing that happened is that Shami army joined him, Al-Nasr Yusuf's army. Now, Halab and Damascus fell, and the Mongols have conquered most of Palestine, and now they are in Gaza, and they are 35 kilometers away. So that's where we got to last time, and these are just more details regarding how Qutuz fixed the affairs of his cabinet. So what about the nation of Egypt? The actual population. Were they ready for this? Firstly, they had huge financial problems. Huge. And because of that, the people were just interested in their daily bread. Their daily bread. Yeah? Because everyone's got financial problems. Look, this is all good and well, but I need to feed my kids. So because of that, they were terrified. And on top of that, they were terrified of the Mongols. There was a saying going around. It says, whoever tells you that the Mongols can be beaten, he is lying. This was saying, yeah, all of the Muslim lands. Whoever tells you the Mongols can be beaten, he is lying. So people begin to believe this. Qutuz needs to encourage the nation to strengthen the army, because if the nation is like, your supporters, if the nation isn't in it, the army is not going to fight with as much ferocity. Now, with all of the problems with the people, there were two characteristics in the Egyptian nation at the time. If these two characteristics are there, then things are fixable. Things are doable. First is religious knowledge and the amount of scholars. The amount of scholars in Egypt. There was religious freedom. There was no such thing as you have to come to sign yourself off before you really you can talk. As long as you're an imam, you have the credentials. Khalas, that was it. There's no political censorship. The other thing, if you remember, I said to you that the Mamluk, from a young age, the first thing he do is he'd learn Arabic. Who would teach him Arabic? At the age of 5, 6, 7, who would teach him Arabic? The Shaykh. Then he would learn the full Quran. Who would teach him the full Quran? The Shaykh. Then he would learn all the fiqh and the ulum al-sharia. Who would teach him that? The shuyukh. So you're talking about now the kings of the country were taught by the shuyukh. Right? And before they were kings, the army of the country was taught by the shuyukh. So the shuyukh have access to the power and have access to everyone. Shuyukh were very, 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 very respected. And one of them that was in Egypt, he actually came from Damascus previously, he was called Al-Izz ibn Abdul Salam, and he's known as the Sultan of the scholars. for many reasons. One of them is that he was the one that sold Qutuz and the rest of the Mamluks and gave them their freedom. Him. So then they called him the Sultan of the ulama, because you have to own the king in order to free the king. That was why he had that name. He was in Damascus previously, and he used to go to Al-Nasir Yusuf, and he used to say to him, "How dare you ally with the Crusaders? How dare you? And how dare you ally with the Crusaders against our brothers in Egypt?" And so Al-Nasir Yusuf used to hate him. He used to hate him. First time round, he imprisoned him. Then after that, he told him, "Get lost, leave the country." So he left and he went to Egypt under the rule of Al-Malik al-Salih, who was the first guy we mentioned last week, who bought the Mamluks in the first place and created the sea Mamluks. They were called Salihin because of him. So now Al-Mu'izz has been there for 15 years. Sheikh Al-Mu'izz has been there for 15 years, and the likes of him. The second thing is that the Egyptians believed in jihad, 100%. Why? Thanks to the Crusaders. Because the Crusaders never left them alone, ever. Every other month there was a new attack. So the Egyptians knew that there's no such thing as stability without jihad. No way. So this wasn't a new concept to them, right? The other thing is, if you remember ages ago when we talked about Baghdad, the army of Baghdad, what was it used for? It was used to build bridges, to farm the lands, big men, right? But the Egyptian army was not like this. They were every single day either in war or training for it. And this was very, very rare. Most of the other armies in the Muslim countries, because they were far away from the Crusaders, didn't really have that. So they would just be fighting with themselves, right? Or they would be planting flowers. Yeah. But the army in Egypt was not like that because of thanks to the Crusaders. The other thing is that because the Crusaders were always bigger in number, the Muslim army in Egypt knew that their power was derived from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the army kept close to Allah. The army worshipped Allah a lot and didn't sin. Yeah? Because they knew there's only like 10,000 versus like 40. So no way in terms of worldly comparison will we win. So we need the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these two factors, that they love jihad and that the ulama and the scholars were plenty and that they had their freedoms. No one in Egypt, for example, would say that you're a terrorist for calling for jihad, or that you're a fundamentalist, or any of these things. These things it was seen as a privilege. So up till now, what we've mentioned, you can see there's a lot going on, isn't it? There's a lot going on. It's too much. Qutuz, how long do you think he's been in power up till now? How many months do you think he'll go back?
46 years.
Huh? You'd have said years, right? 3 months. 3 months have gone by. 3 months. This guy didn't sleep. I don't know what he was doing. Yeah, Red Bull. Okay? But he didn't sleep. 3 months, he's done all of this in 3 months. He's stabilized the region, he's stabilized his cabinet. He's had armies join him in 3 months. And then all of a sudden, he receives messengers from the Mongols. 4 messengers from the Mongols. He needs more time. 3 months. He's only been in power for 3 months. He needs much more time. These 4 messengers come with the following message. In the name of the King of the heavens, he who has given us dominion in this earth over his creation. Remember, because the Mongols believed that there was a king in heaven and a king on earth. So there's a God on earth and a God in heaven, and the God in heaven gives the God on earth power. So they saw themselves as God, but they also had a mix. They were a little Buddhist, a bit Christian, a bit Muslim. So there's a bit of aqidah in there, but not very much. As the owner, or as the king of Egypt, as you know, he said, as the owned king, i.e. as the Mamluk king. So he's mocking. He's saying you're just a slave. He says, as the Mamluk king knows, the one who owns all of Egypt, you know that we are the soldiers of Allah on earth. Listen to these words, okay? You know that we are the soldiers of Allah on earth. right? Liberation, civil, spreading, giving you freedom and democracy, all that garbage. We were created from His wrath, unleashed on those who deserve it. So learn from those before you and surrender, for we do not show mercy to those who cry, and we do not empathize with those that complain. We liberated the countries and we purified the lands. So flee and run as we run after you and we gain. You can't run from our power. Where will you go? Our arrows are like missiles, our swords are thunder, our horses are lightning, our hearts are like mountains. Force cannot stop us, and armies are useless. And your du'as against us are not heard. For you, then this is another shuyukh, right? They're telling you they're like prophets of what. And your du'as against us are not heard. For you have eaten haram. You have stopped replying the salam. Right? You are untrustworthy and you betray, and so you will be punished. Okay? A lot of this is actually true. Okay? A lot of this is actually true, but the irony, the salt, and the vinegar, and the wood is coming from the enemies. And then he mentions the ayah of the Quran, فَالْيَوْمَ تُجْزَوْنَ عَذَابَ الْهُونِ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Today you will taste the demeaning punishment and torture because of that which you have done. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. And those that transgressed will know where they will end up. So he's saying, you guys, because of your transgression against Allah, we who don't even believe in Allah are coming to punish you. Big words, isn't it? Huge words. Qutuz calls for an emergency meeting. He thought he had a lot more time in this, so he calls for an emergency meeting. And he says to the people, we have two options. They're giving us two options. They're saying either we fight, jihad, or we surrender. Qutuz has only one. He only wants one thing. He wants jihad. But you can't just jump into something without the people with you, without people behind you. So he's calling shura. He says, what shall we do? He reads them the letter and they start to quake. This is a huge power. This is the number one superpower. They've dropped down everything. They've destroyed everything. Baghdad, Damascus, Persia, everything. Even the Crusaders, everything. They've destroyed everything. This is a big deal. They have better weapons. They have larger numbers. Everything is tipped for them. So they wanted to surrender. So what does Qutuz do? What does Qutuz do? He has a strategy consisting of two things. The first is to be a role model. Because brothers and sisters, you can say, as the Arabs say, 10,000 words to one man is less effective than one man really showing through his action, just one man. The effect he has on 10,000 people is greater than one guy saying 10,000 words to another man. Yeah? So to be a role model, for people to see within you what it is that you're calling for, is far greater than what you say. So the first thing he does is he gets up and he says, I will fight them alone by myself. I will fight them alone by myself. This guy who's just came 3 months ago, every ruler up till now says, you will fight them alone over there while I press the remote controls. This guy is saying, okay, you guys stay and I'm going to go. I'm going to fight them myself. So he is on the front lines. This isn't a joke for him. And they now feel, whoa, so he's real. Yeah? He's not the coward that we used to seeing and feeling. And then he started to magnify the rewards of death fi sabilillah. He started to make them realize that this was not about being Egyptian. This was not about being Arabs, Arab nationalism. This was about Islam. That was all that this was about. And he says the following: O leaders of the Muslims, you've had enough time to eat from Bayt al-Mal. What does that mean? Bayt al-Mal is the wealth of the Muslims, where all the zakat goes. And where all the taxes that are haram, that should not be imposed on the people, that's where it goes, Bayt al-Mal. It's not supposed to only zakat. He said, you guys have been plundering the wealth of the believers for long enough. You have had the time of eating from Bayt al-Mal. Hating jihad and hating the conquests, because yes, the Crusaders were always fighting in armies, always, but not these guys. They were sitting down, ordering the army to go. He says, yes, you ate from the Bayt al-Mal and you sat down chilling while others went to do the conquest. But I am going. And whoever wants jihad, join me. And whoever doesn't, go back home. And Allah will see you. And Allah is looking. And then he says, the sin of the dishonoring of the Muslim man and the Muslim woman is in the necks of those that stay behind. In other words, all the rapes, all the pillaging, all the killing, all of that will be in your neck, not mine. And then he says, O leaders of the Muslims, who is for Islam if we are not for Islam? Who will defend Islam if we do not defend Islam? Who are we expecting to come from the sky? Right? Who are we expecting to come from the sky? What did they do? Every single one of them burst into tears. He moved their hearts so much. First of all, he's doing it himself. Secondly, he reminded them, this is your sisters, your aunts, your cousin. Why? He knows firsthand. He knows his mother, his aunt, his family were taken captive. He saw this happening to his own people. Yeah? When Jalaluddin fled, he saw this happen. So he's reminding them. And he's telling them who the responsibility will be. Now, they all agreed to do jihad. But what did they agree out of excitement? In the heat of the moment? Or really did they agree? So Qutuz now needs to make a decision, he needs to do something or to solidify this so that they cannot turn back. He decides to kill the 4 messengers. The 4 messengers of the Mongols, he decides to kill them. And he put their heads on the gates in Egypt, in Cairo. Why? Why? To teach the people, to let the people know, I, the leader, am not afraid of these people. Also to give them a bit of dignity in themselves. We're not sheep. Yeah, we can kill as well. Also to make the Mongols realize the people you're coming now to fight, they're not the same as the people you fought before. We're not afraid of them. Yeah, even though May Faqeen, he killed the messenger as well, but he didn't put his head on the gates. And also to make the people realize this is real. We're not joking. This is real. Things are going down. Yeah, this is real. Now, in Islam, the Prophet Islam, there's many hadith to say. For example, he said when Musaylima had sent 2 messengers, these people were Muslims, and they left Islam and believed in Musaylima. They said that he was a prophet. So they were there in front of the Prophet Islam, and he said, do you believe that I'm the man, that Allah's, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? He said, no, Musaylima is Rasulullah. He said, if I were to kill a messenger, I would kill you. And there are other hadith to say that we do not kill messengers. Some of the ulama have extrapolated that it's haram to kill the messengers. I've not looked into the fiqh of this, but because this is a political action, it could be the case that you could say, in times where the international community are not killing messengers, then don't kill messengers. And this is the us, this is the default that we should go with, even if they change their policies. But it could also be said that in times where you're the last flag standing, something needs to happen. Yeah. So I'm not, like I said, I've not looked into the fiqh of it, but it seems that no one stood against him at the time Izzat said this, stand against him, etc. When he did this. Some things are up to the ruler to decide. Some things are like, for example, the talaq, changing the talaq from 3 to 1 or 1 to 3. Umar did this. No one before him did it. No one before him did that. Ali radiallahu anhu, he changed the thing about if you find a camel grazing alone, do you leave it or do you take it? Is it yours? He changed it. Right? He changed it. So things changed based upon the ruler. So when the Prophet did he do it as as a fard, or did he do it as his sunnah in terms of that position that he was in? It's a question to be asked. I don't have the answer to. Now they still have a problem. They don't have the money. They don't have the money. Okay, it's only 3 months since Qutb is in power. They don't have the money to fund the army. You believe it? Yeah. They don't have the money to fund the army. They need money for weaponry. What if Egypt is held under siege? They need stocks of food and whatnot. So he calls the shura, he calls for a shura again. Everything he does is with shura. Everything he does is with shura. And there's many lessons in this. But one of the lessons is that, let's say you're an amazing leader, right? And everyone else is a donkey. Then it's incumbent upon you that you teach these donkeys so that they're not donkeys when you die. Isn't it? When you go on, it's incumbent upon you to teach them. Shura, what shura does is, even like the Prophet said when he made the shura with, shall we leave or shall we stay? And they said, we will leave. But his decision was to stay. Right? He wore the armor and he went with them. And then they said, Ya Rasulullah, we feel that we pushed you a little bit. He said, Khalas, I've done the shura, tawakkal to Allah, that's it. When a Prophet puts armor on, he doesn't take it off. Why is he listening to the shura? They changed their mind and he wasn't with them. And his decision was right actually. Why? Because people will learn from their mistakes. So the collective has to learn. We are a body. Yeah? If your arm knows what to do, but your head is going the other way, what's going to happen? Right? You know, one arm's going here, one leg's going there, you can't stand. So the shura is very, very important because you're teaching the collective. And then when you're gone, maybe the collective will become smarter than you two weeks from now, 2 years from now, because you're teaching them, and the collective learns. Anyway, everything he does is the shura. So he calls them, and he says, we need to ask the people, we need to tax them for the war. How else are we going to pay for it? Now the thing is that Muslims are only really asked to pay zakat. That's it. As a Muslim, you are only asked to pay, you're obliged as a fard to pay 2.5% of your money. And there's different zakat for cattle and plantation and whatnot. And treasures found and oil, all of that's different. But 2.5% of the money that you have. And that's it. And anything above that is known as muks. Muks, right? And the Prophet ﷺ in hadith Ahmad and Abi Dawood عن عقبة ibn Amir, he says, لا يدخل الجنة صاحب مكس. The one who subjugates the people with muks will not enter Jannah. In another hadith in Sahih Muslim, when a woman who had committed zina, right, was killed, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, by Allah, لَقَدْ تَابَ التَّوْبَ لَوْ تَابَ مِنْهَا صَاحِبُ مُكْس لَغُفِرَ لَهُ. By Allah, she has repented and asked tawbah so much, her tawbah is so great in the eyes of Allah that if someone who had taken muks, this tax, if they had done this tawbah, Allah would have forgiven them. In other words, it's worse. It's worse than zina. It's a big deal. A very, very big deal. And it's a human right. It's a human right. You earned your money, you get to keep it. Right? You only pay 2.5% zakat to purify it. Above that, you pay what you will out of sadaqah. But you're not obliged to do it. These taxes that we know of today, they are in Islam not allowed. Except under very, 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 very strict conditions. And you're going to learn about some of them now. Some people go, oh, but what about these roads that we have and these motorways? We have something called road tax. And road tax pays for that. And actually road tax isn't a tax, not really. It's more of a utility bill. Because you don't pay road tax unless you're driving a car. It's not like tax you have to pay just because you're earning money. Yeah, it's a completely different thing. And how much is road tax? If you're driving a beast, it goes up to 300 or something, yeah? 300 compared to, like if someone's on 36 grand, they're paying 9 grand in tax. That's more than a quarter, that's almost a third of the wage. Wages go and the NHS is falling apart. Anyway, all of this stuff is not allowed in Islam, except on the very... Nawawi, he says, muks is the worst of sins. Because what you do is you create a bottleneck. People can't think, right? If you're working to earn 36 grand and you walk away with 26, 27, that's a big deal, right? That's a very, very big deal. So it subjugates people. It subjugates them. You don't feel free. And it causes other problems as well. Like for example, now in economics they say, shall we increase the interest rate to make people save more, or shall we decrease it to make them spend more? How dare you is the answer to that. My money, I get to do with what I want. In Islam, because you're not paying 50% of your wage, you can't save and spend. You understand? Everything changes. So, what is the response of the ulama? Al-Izz ibn Abdul Salam, he says the following: never, wallahi, I will not allow it, except under 2 conditions. The first is that every penny in Bayt al-Mal has to be spent. You guys say we don't have enough money? How come we got money in Bayt al-Mal? Every penny has to be spent. The second condition, after this is spent, if you still need money, then you have to sell everything you own. And all you get to keep is your horse and your weapons. You become just like everyone else. Qutuz was overjoyed. He stood up and he said, I've sold this, that. He sold everything, just kept his horse and his weapons. Because the people with him who had been creaming off Bayt al-Mal saw that he's the king now and he's doing this, they gave up. These two conditions were met and they did not need any taxation from the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not a joke. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thought, astaghfirullah, if Allah knew that we needed more than 2.5% from the people, He would have done. It's not, do you know what I mean? It's like economics. Allah, if we needed more than 2.5%, He said 2.6, 2.7, 5, 10, 15, He'd have capped it. You know, if you're earning more than 8 grand, you get to pay, if you 20%, then 40%. Allah didn't do any of this. Why? Does Allah know better or do we know better? Sometimes when you overtax people, things stop. So they did not need it, and they went. So he did a shura, and he says to the people, I have a plan. So he's doing another shura now. I have a plan. This is how I propose that we attack the Mongols. And he said to them, we will go to Palestine. We will go to Palestine and we will meet them in Palestine. He says, we will go to Palestine and we'll meet them in Palestine. There was an uproar. Uproar, because these kings and generals, etc., they don't want to fight. They only if necessary. There was uproar. They said, we're Egyptians. They're Palestinians. It's not a problem. Yeah? But Qutuz, his equation, the balances, the values in his mind are different. He's not coming at this from a nationalistic perspective. He's looking at this as a Muslim. No such thing as Arab nationalism. He's looking at this as a Muslim. So he explains the first. He says, firstly, Egypt's borders do not start from Cairo or Dumyat or Mansoura. Egypt's borders start from Palestine. Do you understand? Like the borders start from Palestine. So that's the first thing. Secondly, if we go to the enemy, that will scare them. Whoa, they're coming to us. Who has ever come to us before? It will scare them. Thirdly, there's a surprise factor. And if we have the surprise factor, then we have the control. Where we meet them and how we meet them is under our control. And also the psychological, whoa, there's an army here. We're expecting that. Yeah, the psychological factor as well. Number 4, they are Muslims and we are Muslims. And we owe it as Muslims to defend them. And number 5, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You are the best of nations sent to the people. You order that which is good and you forbid that which is evil and you believe in Allah. This is evil. We owe it to humanity. We don't just owe it to Muslims or Arabs. We owe it to humanity to get rid of this evil. So you see he's got a different set of cards than everyone else. He's thinking about a completely different paradigm altogether. Al-Izz ibn Abdul Salam and the scholars now, it's their duty to teach the people, teach the nation, get them prepped up, get them ready for this huge, arduous task. 5 months pass from the receipt of this letter, and there's another problem. In order to go to Gaza, because parts of Palestine are under Crusader rule, because the Shami Ayyubis gave them as gift. Here, take Bayt al-Maqdis, it would just help us invade Egypt, for example. It was one of the things that they did. Because of that, there's one place, Akka, in Palestine, is so fortified, it's more fortified than anywhere in Egypt or Sham. And for 166 years, the Christians were there and no Muslim army could bring that fort down. And those guys are on the way to him going to Palestine. So what's he going to do? He knows that some of the Mongol generals have accepted Christianity. And he knows that many of the Christian nations are working with the Mongols. In fact, the Christians were the ones that went into Mongolia and said, hey, Baghdad is huge with lots of thunder. Help us, and we'll, you can have the thing. Let's just bring it down. So it was actually a lot of this started with the Christian. So he knows this, but he also knows that in Akka, especially in Akka, they hate the Mongols as much as they hate the Muslims. Right? They hate the Mongols as much as they hate the Muslims, and they didn't trust the Mongols because they saw what they did, and the fact that Akka they were a bit fundamentalist in regards to being Catholic. And if you remember 2 weeks ago, I think the fact that Holako brought Orthodox Christian to head the church of a Catholic church. That really annoyed them. So these guys don't like him at all. So he thought, maybe if I get to them first, I can ally with them somehow, and then that way at least I can pass the lands and stop the Mongols from allying. So he knows that they're weak as well, because of the 800,000 dirham ransom that they took from all of the Crusaders everywhere a week because of that, when they caught the King of France. So he sends them messengers asking for a temporary truce. Asking for a temporary truce. Why? Because these guys are never going to stop fighting. Yeah, but just for now we'll have a temporary truce, if you guys don't mind. They agreed. They were very happy. Because they actually didn't know where they stood with the Mongols. Are they going to attack us? Are they going to make us do this? Are they going to make us do that? We don't like them. So they actually were more than happy. They said, yes, we'll give you. They even offered that we will join your army and fight the Mongols. But Qutuz, he says, no. No. I don't want anyone except for sincere Muslims in my army. They can be treacherous afterwards. They've got different loyalties. So I'm not going to have it. So they agreed on a truce. They agreed that the path will be left open, and they agreed that if these guys from Akka want to help, they can send them food and water, etc., just to keep the army going. Now, as the time got closer and closer and closer, now they're leaving. Now they're actually leaving to go to Palestine. Some of the people in the army, once up till now they just couldn't fathom this was going to happen. Once the army started moving, all of a sudden some of the army generals and some people within the army started to flee. Okay? They started to run. Look, you see what Qutuz is going through? You see what he's going through? It's not a joke. It's not just that now that you become in charge of Egypt with a 1%. Now you go and fight Israel. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. You have to put things in order. You can't just do it. People are dying and people don't trust you and people are backstabbing you and people, you don't care about the people in Syria, you don't care. It's not a joke. Everyone has their problems, and this is the way that things have been split up. You have to unite them before moving. See how many problems he's facing? But brothers and sisters, and I know this is not a problem. It's not a problem if those people that are in your army flee because they're cowards. This is not a problem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how لو خرجوا فيكم ما زادوكم إلا خبالا. These people, if they go with you, they will only make you, they will retard you. I mean that as the verb. Yeah? They will make you more backward. They will weaken you. They will weaken you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carries on the same ayah and He says, وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّعُونَ لَهُمْ. And some of you will believe them because we don't have enough. Look at them, they've got superior power, they've got this, they've got that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying it's good that they leave before you've left. So that when you get there, only the sincere are with you. And this is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You find this in the battles of the Prophet said, always the hypocrites leave. Always. This is excellent news. Because imagine you're in the battlefield, as difficult enough as it is, and then half the army just walks away. Disaster. So you want to make sure that all of the half-halves, all of those, that lot of people, they leave. That category is erased. All you have is the people that are going there for death. And if they win, then fine. Sorry, death will be delayed. But you're going for people that want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's it. قُلْ قَوْلِ هَذَا أَسْتَغْفِرُ. That was the most important thing. قُلْ قَوْلِ هَذَا أَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ. جَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. Questions, comments? Is there any questions? Very quickly. But related, yeah? Is it related?
Yes. Can you recommend any good books on the Mongol Empire versus the Muslim Empire?
Not in English.
Not in English.
Not in English. Unless you know. Sorry.
There are in Urdu, but not in
There are Urdu, Persian, Arabic.
you know, the killing of the four messengers. If Sheikh Ali
Killing?
of the four
Messengers.
if Sheikh Ali was there, and we don't find anywhere that he objected, or he gave a fatwa against it, whereas he gave a fatwa against Muslims. So there's a clear thing that the scholars at that time, in their ijtihad, they allowed.
That's what I'm saying.
So the better
There's an ijtihad. I think there's scope in ijtihad, but I haven't looked at it. And just because I don't know, or maybe history didn't write down any objection, but there was, we don't know. Yes?
Is it possible to correct at 8:30?
At 8:30? Kids in 5 days. But it's recorded. Any other questions? Okay. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك.